The royal family of Britain was getting ready for a very big day. Prince William checked his watch as servants rushed around their home at Kensington Palace. Today they would all go to Westminster Abbey for an important service. William wore a dark blue suit that had been pressed perfectly. He looked at himself in the mirror and straightened his tie one last time. In another room, Kate was helping their youngest son Louis with his clothes. The little boy did not like wearing formal clothes and kept trying to loosen his collar. "Please stand still for just one more minute," Kate said with a patient smile. Louis made a funny face but did as his mother asked. Kate herself looked beautiful in her green coat dress. Her hairstylist had just finished working on her hair, making soft waves that framed her face. A makeup artist stood nearby, adding the final touches to her look. Down the hall, Princess Charlotte sat very still as a maid tied a ribbon in her hair. At 10 years old, Charlotte already knew how important these royal events were. She was wearing a dark red dress with shiny black shoes. When the maid finished with her hair, Charlotte practiced her royal wave in the mirror. She wanted to make sure it looked just right. Prince George, the oldest child, was already dressed and ready. At 12 years old, he looked more like his father every day. He sat quietly reading a book about airplanes while waiting for everyone else. Sometimes George felt nervous about these big events because he knew that one day he would be king. But his father had taught him that being nervous was normal, even for future kings. William walked down the hallway, checking on each of his children. He found George first. "Ready for today, son?" William asked. George put down his book. "Yes, father. Do you think there will be many people watching?" William smiled at his son. "Probably thousands at the Abbey and millions more on television. But remember what we talked about. Just be yourself and remember to stand tall." George nodded seriously. Next, William found Charlotte, who was still practicing her wave. "That looks perfect," he told her, and she smiled brightly at him. Finally, he went to check on Kate and Louis. When he opened the door, he laughed. Louis had somehow managed to undo his tie again, and Kate was fixing it with a look of loving frustration on her face. "This boy will be the death of me," Kate said with a smile. "He cannot sit still for even 1 minute." Louis grinned up at his father. "Will there be cake after the service?" he asked hopefully. "Not cake, but I think there might be some biscuits if you behave well," William answered. A royal aide knocked on the door. "Your Royal Highnesses, the cars are ready." The family gathered in the main hall. Kate checked each child one last time, fixing George's hair and straightening Charlotte's ribbon. William looked at his beautiful family with pride. They had practiced for this day. The Commonwealth service was an important event, and having all 3 children there would make news around the world. "Remember," Kate told the children, "smile naturally, walk slowly, and if you feel nervous, just look for Dad or me." The children nodded. Even little Louis looked serious for a moment. They walked outside where 3 black cars waited for them. Security men stood at attention. The first car would take some aides and security staff. The second would carry William and Kate. The third would take the children and their nanny. As they prepared to leave, William took Kate's hand and squeezed it gently. "Ready for another big day, my love?" he asked quietly. She smiled at him. "With you and the children by my side, I am ready for anything." The cars started their engines. The royal family's journey to Westminster Abbey had begun. What they did not know was that this ordinary royal appearance would soon become something much more special and memorable. The royal cars moved smoothly through the streets of London. Inside the second car, Prince William looked out at the people lining the road. Many held small British flags and cameras. Some had been waiting for hours just to see the royal family pass by. "There are more people than usual today," William said to Kate, who sat beside him. Kate nodded. The palace press office said there was a lot of interest when people heard all 3 children would be coming. William smiled. "George is handling it well. I was much more nervous at his age." Kate touched his hand. You were born to be king. He was born to watch you be king first. That makes a difference. The cars turned onto the road leading to Westminster Abbey. The ancient church stood tall and proud against the blue sky. It had seen hundreds of years of royal events. Kings and queens had been crowned there. Royal weddings had filled it with joy. Today it would host the Commonwealth Service, a celebration of nations that work together around the world. In the third car, the three royal children looked out at the growing crowds. "Look at all the people," Charlotte said, pressing her nose against the window. George sat up straight, trying to look calm like his father always did. "Remember what Mum said. Just smile and wave slowly." Louis bounced in his seat. "Can I wave fast if I want to?" Their nanny smiled at the youngest prince. "Perhaps just a little less bouncing, Your Highness." The cars slowed as they approached the Abbey entrance. Royal guards in bright red uniforms stood at attention. News cameras pointed at the cars. The moment had arrived. The first car stopped. Aides and security people got out and took their places. Then the second car stopped at the exact spot where the red carpet began. A royal guard opened the door. Prince William stepped out first, buttoning his jacket as he stood. He turned and offered his hand to Kate. She stepped out gracefully, her green dress catching the sunlight. The crowd cheered loudly. William whispered to Kate, "You look beautiful." She smiled back at him. "And you look very handsome." The third car pulled up. A guard opened the door. George stepped out first, trying to copy his father's movements exactly. Charlotte came next, automatically giving her small wave that made the crowd cheer even louder. Louis jumped out last, his eyes wide at all the noise and excitement. The family stood together at the bottom of the Abbey steps. This was the moment photographers had been waiting for. The future king and his family, all together at the historic Abbey. But then something unexpected happened. The royal family had planned to walk straight into the Abbey as was normal. Instead, William bent down and said something to his children. Kate looked surprised, but then smiled and nodded. William took Louis by the hand and began walking toward the crowd barriers. Kate, George, and Charlotte followed. The security team quickly moved to follow them, some looking worried about this change in plans. "They're coming this way." People in the crowd shouted excitedly. Phones and cameras were raised high. William led his family to where an elderly woman stood holding a small bunch of flowers. The woman had tears in her eyes as William approached. "Hello," William said kindly. "Thank you for coming today." The woman could hardly speak. I brought these for the princess," she finally managed to say, holding out the flowers. William looked at Charlotte and nodded. The young princess stepped forward. "Thank you very much," Charlotte said in a clear voice as she took the flowers. "They are very pretty." Louis tugged at his father's hand, pointing to a small boy in the crowd who was about his age. "Can I say hello to him?" Louis asked. William nodded, and they moved toward the boy. Kate and George followed, stopping to greet other people along the way. Inside Westminster Abbey, the officials were getting worried. The service was scheduled to start in 15 minutes, and the royal family was still outside. This unexpected walkabout was not in the plan. But outside, something special was happening. The royal family was connecting with regular people in a way that hadn't been seen before, with all three children present, and the crowd was loving every minute of it. The royal family continued their surprise walkabout outside Westminster Abbey. People in the crowd could not believe their luck. Most had come hoping for just a quick glimpse of the family. Now they were getting much more. Prince Louis had reached the little boy he spotted in the crowd. The child held a small toy airplane. "I like your plane," Louis said, pointing at the toy. "I have one like that at home. Does yours fly high?" The boy nodded shyly, too amazed to speak to a real prince. His mother stood behind him with tears in her eyes. "He has been so excited to see you," the woman told Louis. "He tells everyone he wants to be a prince when he grows up." Louis smiled wide. "Being a prince is good, but sometimes you have to wear tight clothes," he said, pulling at his collar. The people nearby laughed at his honest words. Further along the line, Princess Charlotte was speaking to a group of girl guides in their uniforms. Charlotte herself was a member of a girl guide group. "Do you enjoy being in the guides?" Charlotte asked them in her clear, proper voice. "Yes, Your Royal Highness," one girl answered. "We learned to build a fire last week." Charlotte's eyes lit up. "We did too. My marshmallow caught on fire, though." The girl guides giggled, surprised that a princess did the same activities they did. Charlotte's simple words made them feel connected to her in a special way. Prince George stood with his father, watching how William spoke to people. George was learning by watching. He saw how his father looked each person in the eye, how he listened carefully to what they said, how he made each person feel important. When an old man in a military uniform approached, William nudged George gently. "Good morning, sir," George said to the veteran. "Thank you for your service." The old soldier stood straighter and saluted the young prince. "It is my honor to meet you, sir. You will make a fine king someday, just like your father will." George blushed but stood tall. "I will try my best," he said simply. Kate moved gracefully along the line, stopping to speak with a group of women holding small children. One baby was crying loudly. "Oh dear," Kate said with a warm smile. "I remember those days very well." The mother looked tired and a bit embarrassed. "He has been fussy all morning. I wanted him to see the royal family, but I think he is too young to care." Kate laughed. Louis was the same at that age. "May I?" She held out her arms. The woman looked shocked but carefully handed her baby to the Princess of Wales. Kate held the child with the ease of an experienced mother. She spoke softly to the baby, who stopped crying and stared up at her with big eyes. "You have the magic touch," the mother said in wonder. Kate handed the now quiet baby back. "All mothers do," she said kindly. "We just forget sometimes when we are tired." Inside the abbey, the Archbishop of Canterbury checked his watch again. The service should start in 5 minutes, but the royal family was still outside. This had never happened before. Royal events always ran exactly on time. "Should we send someone to remind them?" An aide asked nervously. The Archbishop watched through the door as the family continued greeting people. He saw the joy on the faces in the crowd. He saw William and Kate teaching their children an important lesson about connecting with people. "No," the Archbishop decided. "Let them continue. The Commonwealth has waited hundreds of years. It can wait a few more minutes." Outside, a palace official finally approached William. "Your Royal Highness," he said quietly. "The service." William nodded. He caught Kate's eye, and she began to gather the children. "We must go in now," William told the crowd. "Thank you all for coming today." People cheered and clapped as the family came back together at the bottom of the abbey steps. They had just broken royal tradition in the most wonderful way. The rigid rules of royal behavior had been gently set aside for something more important, showing the children that being royal meant connecting with people. As they climbed the steps together, Louis turned and gave one last big wave to the crowd. The people waved back, feeling like they had just shared something truly special with the royal family. The great doors of Westminster Abbey closed behind the royal family. They stood for a moment in the cool air of the entrance hall. The sound of the crowd outside became quiet. A church official came forward. "Your Royal Highnesses, if you would follow me, please." The family walked through the ancient church. The inside of Westminster Abbey was beautiful. Tall stone columns reached up to a high ceiling. Colored light came through large windows. The floor had been walked on by kings and queens for hundreds of years. Many important people were already seated inside. Prime ministers, presidents, and leaders from many countries turned to watch as the royal family walked down the center aisle. Louis held tight to Kate's hand, suddenly shy with so many eyes on him. Charlotte walked with perfect posture, looking straight ahead. George kept his eyes on his father's back, copying his confident walk. William and Kate nodded to people as they passed. Kate spotted an old friend and gave a small smile. William saw the Prime Minister and gave a respectful nod. They reached their seats in the front row. As the family sat down, Louis whispered something to Kate. She bent down. "What is it, darling?" "The ceiling is so high," Louis said. "Is it as high as the sky?" Kate smiled. "Not quite that high, but it is very tall, isn't it?" The Archbishop of Canterbury moved to the front of the church. His robes were grand and colorful. He waited for the royal family to settle, then raised his hands. "Welcome to Westminster Abbey," his voice rang out. "Today we celebrate the Commonwealth of Nations." The service began with music. A large choir sang songs from different Commonwealth countries. The voices filled the great space with beautiful sounds. Prince William watched his children as they listened. George sat still and proper. Charlotte swayed slightly to the music. Louis tried his best to sit still, but his little legs swung back and forth under the seat. Kate noticed Louis getting restless. She quietly opened her small bag and took out a tiny pad of paper and a pencil. She passed them to Louis, who began to draw happily. The first speaker talked about peace between nations. Louis drew a picture of the Abbey. Charlotte listened carefully to every word. George watched how the adults behaved, learning from them. As the service continued, people in the Abbey kept glancing at the royal children. It was rare to see all three at an official event. Many were surprised by how well they behaved. What the people did not see was Kate's gentle hand on Louis' back when he got wiggly. They did not see William's proud smile when George asked a thoughtful question during a quiet moment. They did not see Charlotte helping her little brother find the right page in the program. These small family moments happened in the middle of the grand service. The royal family was both public and private at the same time. They were doing their royal duty while also being simply a father, mother, and their children. Halfway through the service, a group of children from across the Commonwealth came forward to speak. They talked about their hopes for the future. They spoke about climate change, education, and peace. Prince George listened with special interest. One day, he would work with the Commonwealth as king. These children were talking about the world he would help lead someday. The service continued with more music and speeches. Outside, the crowd waited patiently, hoping for another glimpse of the family when they left. Inside the Abbey, history was happening in both large and small ways. The future of the monarchy was sitting in the front row, learning, watching, and growing before everyone's eyes. After the service ended, the royal family was led to a large room at the back of Westminster Abbey. This was where they would meet important guests at a small reception. Tables with food and drinks were set up around the room. People stood in small groups talking quietly. When William and Kate entered with their children, everyone turned to look. "Remember," Kate whispered to the children, "say hello, shake hands if offered, and smile." The children nodded. They had practiced this many times. The Archbishop of Canterbury approached first. "Thank you for the lovely walkabout earlier," he said. "It meant a great deal to the people waiting outside." William smiled. It felt right to include the children in greeting the public today. "A wonderful decision," the Archbishop said. He then bent down to speak to the children. "And how did you enjoy the service?" "The music was very nice," Charlotte answered politely. "I liked the children who spoke," George added. "It was long," Louis said honestly. The adults laughed at his simple truth. Kate guided the children around the room. They met leaders from Canada, Australia, India, and many other countries. George shook hands properly. Charlotte gave her perfect small curtsy to each person. Louis tried his best, but sometimes forgot and just waved instead. A tall man from New Zealand bent down to Louis's level. "Hello, young prince. That is a very smart suit you are wearing." Louis smiled. "Thank you. But it is a bit tight here," he said, pointing to his collar again. The man laughed. "I feel the same way about my tie." Across the room, William was speaking with the Prime Minister. They talked seriously about world issues. As a future king, William needed to understand the problems facing the world. Kate stood with a group of women, including several queens and first ladies from other countries. They spoke about children's education and health, things Kate cared deeply about. Charlotte stayed close to her mother, listening to the women talk. She was learning too, watching how her mother handled her royal role with grace. George found himself speaking to a young president from an African country. "What is it like to be a future king?" the president asked him kindly. George thought for a moment. "I am still learning what it means," he answered carefully. "My father is teaching me slowly." The president nodded. "That is a wise approach. Leadership should be learned step by step." Meanwhile, Louis had spotted the food table. He tugged on his father's jacket. "Dad," he whispered loudly, "can I have a biscuit?" William looked down. "Just one, and be careful not to get crumbs on your suit." Louis walked carefully to the table. A kind server bent down and showed him the different treats. Louis pointed to a chocolate biscuit. "Excellent choice, Your Royal Highness," the server said with a smile, handing it to him. Louis took a big bite, leaving chocolate at the corner of his mouth. Kate spotted this from across the room and quickly found a napkin in her bag. She was always prepared for moments like this with Louis. As she wiped his face, photographers at the edge of the room captured the sweet moment between mother and son. It was these glimpses of normal family life that made the public love them. The reception continued for an hour. By the end, even George was getting tired of standing and talking. The family had done their royal duty well. But now it was time to go home. As they prepared to leave, the children were praised by many for their good behavior. Louis had managed not to spill anything on his suit. Charlotte had spoken nicely to everyone. George had shown himself to be thoughtful and mature. William and Kate were proud of their children. This had been an important day in their young royal lives. The royal family left the reception and walked back through Westminster Abbey. Their security team moved ahead to make sure the cars were ready. "Did I do okay?" George asked his father quietly as they walked. William put his hand on his son's shoulder. "You did very well. I am proud of you." George smiled, relieved. He always wanted to make his father proud. Charlotte walked beside Kate, holding her hand. "Mummy, one lady said I look just like you." Kate smiled. "Many people say that. It is a nice compliment." Louis walked between his parents, holding both their hands. He was getting tired after the long day. Sometimes he would swing from their hands, letting his feet come off the ground for a moment. As they reached the main doors of the abbey, they could hear the crowd outside. The people had waited all through the service, hoping to see the royal family again. William stopped and looked at Kate. They seemed to have a silent conversation with just their eyes. "What do you think?" he asked. "One more quick walkabout before we go." Kate checked her watch. "We have time. The children have been so good." William turned to his children. "Would you like to say goodbye to the people outside before we go home?" George nodded seriously. Charlotte smiled and said, "Yes, please." Louis suddenly had more energy and jumped up and down saying, "Yes, yes." The official from the palace looked worried. "Sir, this is most unusual. 2 walkabouts in one day." William smiled. "Sometimes it is good to be unusual." The great doors opened. The bright afternoon sun made them blink after the dim light inside the abbey. The crowd, which had grown even larger during the service, cheered loudly when they saw the family. This time, the family split up to cover more of the crowd. William took George to the left. Kate took Charlotte and Louis to the right. Their security guards stayed close. George walked beside his father, watching how he greeted people. When William stopped to speak to an old man in a wheelchair, George stopped too. "Hello, sir," George said, remembering to look the man in the eye as his father had taught him. The old man had tears in his eyes. "I saw your great-grandmother when she was crowned queen," he told George. "And now I have met you, the future king. What a blessing in my long life." George did not know what to say to such big words. He looked at his father for help. William stepped in. "That is a wonderful connection through history. Thank you for sharing that with us." On the other side, Kate helped Charlotte and Louis greet people. Charlotte was given more flowers. Louis was shown a small dog that someone had brought. "Can I pet it?" Louis asked. "Of course," the dog's owner said. Louis gently patted the small dog, which licked his hand. Louis giggled, a pure sound of childhood joy that made everyone nearby smile. Charlotte spoke to a group of little girls who were about her age. "Do you go to school near here?" she asked them. The girls nodded, too shy to speak to a real princess. "What is your favorite subject?" Charlotte asked, trying to help them feel comfortable. "Art," one girl finally said. "I like painting." Charlotte smiled. "I like art too, and ballet dancing." Suddenly the girls were talking excitedly, telling Charlotte about their own dance classes. The princess had turned from a distant royal figure into someone they could relate to. Kate watched proudly as her daughter showed the natural ability to connect with people. This was something that could not be taught. It came from the heart. The walkabout continued for 10 minutes. The family made their way along the crowd barriers, trying to speak to as many people as possible. Security kept checking the time, ready to move them to the cars when needed. As the family came back together at the bottom of the Abbey steps, the crowd gave them a loud cheer. This day had been special. The royal family had broken with tradition to connect with people in a warm, natural way. They waved one last time before getting into their cars. Louis gave his big, energetic wave that made people laugh. Charlotte did her perfect royal wave. George waved in the more reserved style of his father. The cars pulled away, heading back to Kensington Palace. The crowd began to break up, everyone talking excitedly about what they had seen. "Did you see Prince Louis with that dog? Princess Charlotte is so grown up now. Prince George looks just like his father." The day at Westminster Abbey was over, but the memory of it would last a long time for everyone who was there. Back at Kensington Palace, the royal family changed out of their formal clothes. William took off his tie with relief. Kate slipped off her high heels. The children quickly changed into comfortable play clothes. They gathered in the family sitting room. This room was never seen by the public. It had comfortable sofas, children's books on shelves, and family photos everywhere. It looked like any family's living room, except for the royal crest above the fireplace. "Can we have ice cream?" Louis asked, bouncing on the sofa. "After you have eaten a proper dinner," Kate said. "You need real food first." Charlotte sat next to her mother. "People seemed happy to see us today," she said thoughtfully. William sat down with them. "Yes, they were. It means a lot to people when we take time to speak with them." George was looking at his phone. At 12, he was old enough to have one, but his parents kept careful watch over what he saw on it. "Dad, we are on the news," George said, showing his father the screen. William took the phone and looked at it. The royal family's Westminster Abbey appearance was the top story. There were pictures of their surprise walkabouts and videos of Louis waving to the crowd. "Looks like we made quite an impression," William said, showing the phone to Kate. "Can I see?" Charlotte asked. She looked at the pictures of herself on the screen. "My ribbon came untied," she noticed, always aware of small details. Louis climbed onto the sofa between his parents. "Can we go back tomorrow and see the people again?" Kate laughed. "Not tomorrow, but we will see people on other special days." A palace staff member entered the room. "Excuse me, Your Royal Highnesses. The king is on the telephone for you." William went to take the call from his father, King Charles. Kate turned to the children. "Why don't you tell Nanny Maria about your day while I help Dad with the call? Then we will have dinner." The children went with their nanny, talking excitedly about everything they had seen and done. In his office, William spoke with his father. The children did very well. William told the king. "George is really starting to understand his future role." "I saw the news coverage," King Charles said. "The walkabouts were an excellent idea. Very modern. The public loved it. It felt right to let the children meet the people who had waited so long to see them. William explained. Your mother would have approved, the king said quietly. William was silent for a moment, thinking of his mother, the late Princess Diana. She had been known for her warm connection with ordinary people. Yes, I think she would have, William agreed. Later, the family sat down to dinner together. Unlike most royal dinners, this was just family with no guests or formal service. They talked about their day as they ate. The abbey ceiling was so high, Louis said, still impressed by the building. It took over 700 years to build Westminster Abbey, George told his brother. He had read this in a book and remembered it. That is a very long time, Charlotte said, longer than even great-granny was queen. The children continued talking about what they had seen. Kate and William exchanged smiles across the table. Days like today were important for the children's future, but right now they were just a family having dinner together. After ice cream, as promised, the children got ready for bed. Louis asked for a story about kings and queens. Charlotte wanted to practice her piano lesson before sleeping. George asked if he could read for a while in bed. As William and Kate tucked Louis into bed, he asked a question. Do all those people love us? William thought carefully before answering. They love what we stand for. We represent the history and future of our country. That is why it is so important that we are kind and good to everyone we meet. Louis nodded, though he did not fully understand yet. He was still learning what it meant to be royal. Even if they do not know us, we must always try to be worthy of their respect, Kate added, kissing Louis goodnight. As the palace settled into evening quiet, the royal family reflected on a day that had changed things in a small but important way. The future king and his family had shown a new, more open style of royal behavior, and the public had responded with love and support. The next morning, every newspaper in Britain had the royal family on the front page. The pictures showed William and Kate with their 3 children, both during the official appearance and during their surprise walkabouts. Royal family tradition at Westminster, one headline read. Prince Louis Steels, the Cheshire, said another, with a large picture of Louis waving enthusiastically to the crowd. At Kensington Palace, a staff member brought the morning papers to William and Kate as they had breakfast. It seems we made the news, Kate said, looking through the papers. William nodded. The press office says the response has been very positive. People loved seeing all 5 of us together, especially when we spoke directly with the crowd. In the family kitchen, the children were eating breakfast with their nanny. George had a bowl of healthy cereal. Charlotte was eating fruit and yogurt. Louis had talked his nanny into giving him waffles with maple syrup. Can we see the newspapers? George asked when his parents came in. William showed them the front pages. Louis pointed excitedly at his own picture. That is me. I look happy. You always look happy, Charlotte told her brother. Look, there I am talking to those girls about ballet. George looked at a picture of himself speaking with the elderly veteran. Dad, can we visit veterans' hospitals sometimes? I like talking to the old soldiers. William put his hand on his son's shoulder. That is a wonderful idea. We can arrange that. Kate sat down with the children. How do you all feel about yesterday? Was it scary to meet so many people? Charlotte shook her head. It was not scary. They were all very nice. I liked the dog best, Louis said, his mouth full of waffle. Don't speak with your mouth full, Charlotte reminded him automatically. George was more thoughtful. I felt nervous at first, but then I watched how you and Dad talked to people, and I tried to do the same thing. William and Kate exchanged proud glances. Their children were learning the royal role so naturally. The palace telephone rang. A staff member answered it, then came to speak quietly to William. Sir, the Prime Minister would like to congratulate you on yesterday's appearance. She says it has created a very positive feeling in the country. William nodded. Please thank her. I will call her back later today." More good news came throughout the morning. The royal press office reported that social media was full of positive comments about the family. TV news programs were showing clips of the children greeting the public. Royal experts were calling it a turning point for the monarchy. In his office, William had a video call with his team. They were discussing future events where the children might join them. "We need to be careful not to overdo it," William said. "They are still children. Their education and normal childhood must come first." "Of course, sir," his secretary agreed. But yesterday showed how powerful it can be when the family connects directly with the public. In another room, Kate was also on a call, speaking with the heads of her charity projects. "The children enjoyed meeting the public," she told them. "We should think about including them in some of the less formal charity events, where appropriate." Around lunchtime, a special delivery arrived at the palace. It was a large box of handmade cards and letters from the children who had been in the crowd at Westminster Abbey. Kate gathered her children to look at the cards together. "Look at all these beautiful messages," she said, showing them the colorful cards. Charlotte read one aloud. "Dear Princess Charlotte, I like your burgundy dress. You were so nice to talk to us about ballet." From Emma, age 9. Louis found a card with a drawing of himself waving. "They drew my smile too big," he said, but he was pleased with the picture. George read a letter from a young boy who wrote that he wanted to be just like Prince George when he grew up. George seemed surprised by this. "But he does not know me," George said. "Not really." "That is an important lesson," William told his son. "People will form ideas about who you are based on small moments. That is why we always try to be our best selves in public." The family spent time looking through all the cards and letters. Kate suggested they write some thank you notes in return. The children sat at a table together, writing careful notes that would be sent to some of the children. This quiet family time, responding to the public with gratitude, was as important as the grand appearance at Westminster Abbey. It showed the children that royal duty was about both the big moments and the small personal touches. By the end of the day, what had been a simple royal appearance at Westminster Abbey had become something much more. It had shown a new vision of the monarchy, more open, more family-centered, more connected to ordinary people. And it had all started with a simple decision to bring the children along and to step away from rigid tradition for a few minutes to greet the waiting crowd. 1 week after the Westminster Abbey appearance, life at Kensington Palace had returned to normal. The children were back at school. William and Kate had resumed their regular royal duties, but something had changed. The palace had received thousands of letters from people all over Britain and the Commonwealth. People wrote about how seeing the royal children had made them feel connected to the monarchy in a new way. In his private office, William was meeting with his father, King Charles, who had come to visit. "Your Westminster appearance has created quite an impact," the king said. "People are still talking about it." William nodded. "It was not planned. Kate and I just felt it was the right moment to let the children meet the people." "Sometimes the unplanned moments are the most powerful," the king said. "Your mother understood that very well." At her school, Princess Charlotte was having an ordinary day. In art class, the teacher asked the children to draw a picture of an important day in their lives. Charlotte thought for a moment, then began to draw Westminster Abbey. She carefully added the crowd of people outside. She drew herself and her family standing on the steps. A classmate looked over at her drawing. "Is that when you were on TV last week?" Charlotte nodded. "It was an important day. I met many nice people." "Was it scary?" another child asked. "With all those people looking at you?" Charlotte thought about this. "Not scary. But I knew I needed to be my best self." At his school, Prince George was having lunch with his friends. They had stopped talking about the Westminster appearance days ago. To them, George was just their classmate who happened to be a prince. "Are you coming to football practice after school?" one boy asked him. George nodded. "Yes, Dad is picking me up after." His life balanced between two worlds, his future role as king and his present life as a normal schoolboy. The Westminster appearance had been part of his royal life. Football practice was part of his normal life. At his preschool, Prince Louis was painting a picture. His hands were covered in blue and green paint. "I am painting the big church," he told his teacher. "The one with the high ceiling." The teacher smiled. "Westminster Abbey, where you went with your family." Louis nodded. "People were happy to see us. A dog licked my hand." Even at his young age, Louis understood that something special had happened that day. Back at the palace, Kate was working with her team on new projects. One idea had come directly from the Westminster experience. "I want to create more opportunities for children to connect with the monarchy," she explained. "Perhaps a special yearly event just for children at the palace gardens." Her staff made notes, excited by the idea. The Westminster appearance had shown how powerful the connection between the public and the royal children could be. That evening, the family had dinner together, talking about their day. After dinner, William took George aside. "I have something to show you," he said, leading his son to his office. On William's desk was a large book. "This is a history of the monarchy," William explained. "Every king and queen of England, and then Britain is in here."